Hello, my loves. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Matilda of Lazy Camel Collective, and this week we're finally doing another thrift flip. This is the thrift flip that was supposed to be last week, but got a little bit derailed by a series of unfortunate events. You can head to this link to check that video out. I ended up doing a self-drafted thrift flip kind of situation where I turned a skirt into a shirt, and it just was a disaster. This week, we are gonna do the video that I was gonna do last week, which is turning 3 thrifted pieces into 4 new pieces to add to my spring wardrobe. I have a couple of really awesome pieces picked out for us today to revitalize. I love doing thrift flips. They are one of my favorite things to do. I just love seeing the potential in the colors, the textures, the patterns, all of the things in clothes that I find at the thrift store, and just breathing new life into them and putting my own unique spin on them. Thrift flips are also really awesome because 85% of clothes that get donated end up going to landfill anyways. So thrift flips are just an amazing way to keep textile waste out of landfill and make sure that donated clothes get worn and loved. So I'm super excited for this one. I have kind of a general plan for the direction that we're going to go in today. So let's get started and see what we can do. Okay, so our first piece today is going to be this lace black kind of maxi dress. I just really love like the laciness of this. If you saw my last thrift flip video, you know that I am very obsessed with lace crochet maxi skirts right now. 2 videos ago, I turned a vintage crocheted dress into a long crocheted maxi skirt. So I'm thinking of doing something kind of similar this week with this skirt. So these are kind of the inspiration photos that I have for this piece. I think since this dress is really big on me, I will have a lot of extra fabric to work with, and I'll be able to make some kind of new top as well. I was sad 2 videos ago when I made the crocheted maxi skirt that I had to use most of the fabric to actually make the skirt, and so I didn't have a ton of material left over to make the top. So I think with this piece, luckily it is just so big on me that I will have a lot of leftover material to make some kind of fun top. But I think we're once again just going to have to see how much material we have left over after making the skirt in order to see what we're going to do. I'm definitely going to add some tiers to the skirt as well, like in those inspiration photos. I just really love like the black lace with the tiered. I don't know, I just think it looks really pretty and kind of edgy but also elegant. So we'll see how that goes and what we can do. This also has like a big slit in the back, so we're gonna have to work around that as well. I kind of want to keep it just because I like kind of the slit look, but we're just gonna have to play around a little bit and see how to kind of make that work with the tiers and make sure everything kind of fits back together after we finish cutting it all up. So let's get to it. Let's see what we can make. I'm very, very excited for this one. Let's get started. Getting started, I'm just laying the dress down on my table, and I'm finding where the lining is connected to the dress, and I'm just cutting that out from the front part of the dress. And then I had already measured where I wanted the skirt to lay and how long I wanted the skirt to be. So I'm just cutting out based off of where I had measured all the way across the skirt. In order to make the tiers, I'm measuring the length of the skirt, and I know that I wanted to have 3 tiers total. So I need to make 2 cuts. So I'm taking the length of the skirt and dividing that by 3 so that I know how big to make my tiers. And then I'm just cutting out those 2 tiers, making those 2 cuts here. The next step is to pin everything back together. I know it's kind of silly just cutting up the skirt just to put it back together again, but that's the price that we pay for beauty and fashion, I guess. So I'm just pinning the first tier to the middle tier, right sides together. And the way that I did this is I kind of just flipped the top tier on top of the middle tier and then lined the edges up and then just pinned all the way around the entire skirt. And then I'm taking it over to my sewing machine and just sewing those 2 tiers together. I'm just gonna do a straight stitch once, and then I'm gonna go back around again and do a zigzag stitch to finish off those edges. And I'm just gonna do that all at once here just so I don't have to go back and do it later. And this is what the first tier is looking like, nice and clean. You can kind of get an idea of the direction that we're going in here already. And then we're just gonna do this all over again for the bottom tier. So connecting the bottom tier to the middle one, right sides facing each other, doing that all the way around the width of the skirt. And then we'll take it back over again to the sewing machine and just sew it all together, finish off those ends, and then we'll be done with the top part of the skirt. So this is what the front of the skirt is starting to look like. You can kind of get a better idea of the vision. You can see the tiers here. It's looking very nice. My vision is coming to life. So the last thing to do is just attach the lining. So I just have my lining laid out on my table, and I'm just gonna cut as high up on the lining as I can. This ended up being a lot shorter than I expected it to be, so I wanted to make sure that I could use as much of the material as I possibly could. So I just cut a straight line right across there. Sorry for the blurry shot. My camera really didn't like all this black fabric. And then we're just going to attach the lining to the front of the skirt. So I did screw this part up, so listen carefully so you don't make the same mistake that I did. So you want to line up the right side of the outside of your skirt with the wrong side of the lining. So basically what we're doing here is we're attaching the lining to the front of the skirt so that we can then flip the lining inside the skirt and have that just kind of finished edge and hide the seams there basically. So we want to line this up so that the wrong side of the lining is facing your legs and the right side of the lining is facing the inside of the skirt and the outside of your body, I guess, if that makes sense. I lined it up like you normally line up things when you make your seams and did right sides together. And so it ended up being that the lining, the inside of the lining of the skirt was facing the outside. And since it was black, it didn't really matter. You couldn't really tell. But if you're working with other colors or you have more like obvious seams on your lining, it just is going to look like you have the inside of your lining showing on the outside. So just heads up, don't do what I did. Don't make my mistakes. And then I'm just sewing the lining to the outside of the skirt, doing a regular just straight stitch. And then I think I did do a zigzag stitch just to finish this off so that we didn't have any fraying or anything like that as well. This is what it's going to look like when you flip the lining inside the outside of the skirt. You can see that nice finished edge along the top there. And then this is what the lining looks like inside the skirt. Next up, we are going to make a tube to put the elastic in around the waistband. So I'm just measuring 1.5 inches from the top of the skirt. And I'm just putting a couple pins in just to have some guidelines to know where to sew my line. So I'm just putting those pins all around the waist of the skirt. And then I'm just going to take it over to my sewing machine, do a quick straight stitch, and make sure to leave like a 1 or 2 inch gap so that you have some space to feed your elastic into the waistband. And then silly Matilda strikes again. I started to feed my elastic into the waistband here, and I realized that I was using a white elastic, and I have a lace see-through front of the skirt, so you could see the white elastic through the waistband. So luckily I had this spare black elastic. I have absolutely no clue where it came from. It was pretty old, pretty stretched out, but I just happened to have it in my little elastic bin, and it was too thick for the waistband that I had sewn. So I'm just figuring out how to cut it down to the 1 inch width that I had sewn into the waistband. And then take 2, I'm just going to feed that black elastic into the waistband there. I pinned a safety pin into the front of it, and then I'm just going to pooch it all the way around until it comes back out the other side, because it wouldn't be a sewing project if absolutely everything didn't go wrong. I had finished feeding this elastic all the way through the waistband and was getting ready to, I think actually I had already sewn it shut. I didn't get any footage of this, but I had sewn the elastic shut. I was ready to finish the project, and the elastic split in half, not where I had sewn it together, but there was, I guess, just a rip in the elastic that I hadn't noticed. And in the process of kind of pulling it all the way through the waistband, I guess that just snapped the elastic in half. And so I had to take the elastic out again and then feed it all the way back through the waistband and then sew it back together again at the part that ripped in half. But anyways, I digress. I'm just gonna finish up the elastic and sew it together so that we have one final loop of elastic. And then I'm going to finish up the tubing of the waistband of the skirt just to close up that gap that we left in order to feed the elastic through. And we should have our final skirt. I love how this skirt turned out. It's exactly what I was picturing. I think the length is absolutely perfect. It hits my ankles, and as a tall girl, I want all of my skirts to be as long as they possibly can. I would have them touching the ground, honestly, if I possibly could. I do think that the lining is a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, so I'll probably just go in with my serger and just cut that off, probably by like 2 or 3 inches, just so that it hits more like mid thigh instead of like closer to my knee, just because with the length of it you can't actually see the tiers that we did, so I want to be able to at least like show that off since we put in that little bit of extra effort into making those. But otherwise I think it's great. It's exactly what I was picturing. I love how it turned out and I can't wait to wear it. So this is the amount of top that we have left. It's not much, so I'm thinking I'm probably gonna, this is actually the front and then this is the back. I'm not sure if you can see, but there's like actually not any material left in the back because there was that big scoop kind of in the back. So I'm thinking of actually kind of flipping this around and having this part be the front. And I think I'm gonna just keep it pretty simple and just add some ties to the front there and have kind of like a cardigan sort of situation that I can just put on over some kind of tank top or something. I'll probably keep it pretty simple. I had dreams of adding sleeves and flares, but I didn't really have that much material left over at the end of this. So I think just in the spirit of using everything that we possibly can, I will probably just turn this into like a little cardigan that I can wear on top of like a dress or on top of like a tank top or something like that. So let's see what we can do. I think it'll be pretty simple, pretty easy, straightforward. So let's get to it. So I'm just trying the shirt on and just seeing kind of how it fits me and where it lays and kind of coming up with the game plan as I'm standing here looking at it. So I literally just decided to take my scissors, cut that little piece of elastic in half, and then my plan is to just take 2 pieces of bias tape that I had already sewn together to make straps and just sew them right to those little ends of the elastic there, and it's basically going to end up looking like this. So I'm just going to quickly show you that process of what I did. I'm just going to start by finishing the bottom edge of the shirt with a lettuce hem. So in order to do the lettuce hem, I just put my sewing machine on a zigzag stitch and I made sure the stitch length was pretty short. And then you can see here, I'm kind of pulling the front and the back of the material as it goes underneath my needle. And this material had a really nice stretch to it. So I did get a pretty sweet lettuce hem on the bottom of this. You'll see it in the final photo. But yeah, just finishing the bottom edge of the hem. Then we'll go ahead and attach those ties to the front of the shirt. These are the ties that I'm going to be using. I just happen to have bias tape in black already on hand that I had already kind of sewn a straight line to make these skinny straps. So I had a pretty long piece, so I'm just cutting them in half to make 2 straps. And then I'm gonna pin those to the front of the shirt, take it over to my sewing machine, and it's pretty much just that simple. We have a top. Okay, so for our next piece, we're going to be working with this beautiful red scarf with the tassels. I saw this in the thrift store a couple weeks ago and just absolutely fell in love with the color. I love the embroidered flowers that it has on it, and these tassels, are you kidding me? I love them so much. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what to do, and I was thinking of doing like a mock neck situation or like another tied front situation, but I honestly just don't have the mental energy today to figure that out. So I think I'm going to turn this into a tube top. I don't really have any tube tops in my closet. I just tend to like I don't know. I just don't buy them. I don't know why. So I feel like I would love to experiment with that and try one out. And I actually have plans tonight to go out with some friends. So I think if we can get this done in the next hour or so, I'll be able to wear it for that. And I think that'll be really fun and exciting. So for this, the elastic is really going to be the star of the show. I have a huge roll of sewing elastic. So we're basically just going to take that and just sew a bunch of lines all the way along the front and back of this shirt. And then that'll allow us to have enough material for it to stretch over my head and fit me properly. So yeah, this should be pretty straightforward. It shouldn't take too long. It'll be really easy to replicate at home as well. So follow along with your sewing machine and let's get to it. So to start out with this piece, I'm just cutting the length and width of the fabric. This is pretty simple. You essentially just need two pretty large panels of fabric. You can use this with scrap fabric that you have at home, or if you're like me and you found a beautiful scarf, you can kind of do the same exact thing. For the width of your fabric, you want to take the widest part of your chest measurement, which is your bust, and then you want to divide that number by 2, and that's going to give you the width of your fabric for each panel that you have, if that makes sense. And then for the length of the material, you just want to measure from somewhere around like your mid chest down to however long that you want this top to be. For me, I did 10 inches long. This did not include the tassels. I just wanted to make sure that I had enough material that was actually going to cover my chest, and then whatever length the tassels were was just going to be kind of a fun extra bonus. And then the next thing we're going to do is just pin those two pieces together, right sides facing. You could do a French seam here. I just did a pretty small zigzag stitch to connect these two pieces, just because it was kind of a sheer mesh fabric. I didn't really want to have a super bulky seam, so I just did a super, super teeny tiny little zigzag stitch to finish up the edges and hold everything pretty snugly together. And this is what it's looking like so far. I love how this is turning out. I love the tassels, obsessed. And I'm just going to finish up that top seam with another zigzag stitch. Since we're going with kind of a gathered look with the elastic at the top, I think having a sort of rough, kind of unfinished, but still kind of finished edge is going to look really nice here. And I think especially with this mesh material, I don't really want to have like a rolled hem or anything like that at the top. So doing a quick zigzag stitch, and then it's going to be time to add in the elastic. So to do the elastic for this top, we're going to use this shearing thread, and basically this works like any normal thread that you'd use in your machine, but we're only going to load it into the bobbin. We're not going to use it as our top thread. So you unfortunately have to hand thread your bobbin in order to do this. Luckily, I only had to do this, I think, only once. I don't think I had to reload my bobbin. So one bobbin does go a long way. So I'm just struggling to get the thread through the bobbin hole here. And I'm going to, just hand spin my bobbin here. And then I'm going to load this into my machine like I normally do. And yeah, thread up my machine. It's literally just as simple as using a normal thread and normal bobbin. And then I'm just sewing a bunch of straight lines all the way along the front and back of the shirt. You really don't have to do anything special using this shearing thread. It will just naturally gather because of the tension that the machine puts on the thread when you're putting it through the machine. So I started my first stitch about 1/4 of an inch from the top of the top. You can do it as close or as far away from the top of your shirt as you would like to, just depending on the look that you're going for. Here's kind of a better look of how the machine just kind of does that gathering effect with the shearing thread. I think it just, I don't know, it just looks so pretty, especially with this fabric. I'm so happy with this. But that happiness did not last very long because once again, Matilda made a mistake. After doing, I think, 3 or 4 rows of this shearing stitches, I realized that since I was sewing my shirt inside out, like you always sew your shirt, since the elastic was in the bobbin and the bottom part of the shirt was the front of the shirt, when you flip the shirt right side out, the elastic was showing on the front of the shirt. And that is not what you want it to look like. You want to have the top thread, the thread that you have threaded through the top, in the front of the shirt. This was the moment that I realized that I had messed up. So I had my little meltdown, and then I just recovered and took out my seam ripper and just ripped out all of the seams that I had just spent 30 minutes putting into the shirt. And then I'm not going to bore you with more shots of me just sitting at my sewing machine sewing lines of thread into a shirt. But I went back in and fixed everything. I sewed the shirt right side out, so the elastic was on the inside of the shirt this time, and this is what the top part is looking like. I'm kind of deciding that I want to do kind of like a gathered bust kind of situation. So I measured out about, I think, 3 inches from the bottom of the shirt so that I could just kind of do a couple rows of elastic underneath my bust, and that would give it kind of that puffy gathered tube top kind of look. So I'm just gonna sew a couple more lines of elastic into the shirt, and then we should be done. Oh my God. I am so happy with how this shirt turned out, but oh my goodness, did it stress me out there for a second. Let me first talk about what I love about this piece, and then I'll talk about the struggles that I went through and lessons learned from this piece. So, I love the color. I honestly started out not really knowing how I was going to do the elastic or like where I was going to put it. I really didn't have a vision for this piece at all. If you remember, I was planning on making a skirt, and then I didn't have any lining to use to make the skirt, and so I decided to make a shirt. And then I was originally going to make a mock neck shirt, and then I realized that I didn't feel like doing that, and also it's about to be summertime here in Austin, and so I just know that I'm not going to get a lot of use out of a mock neck anyways. So I decided to make this tube top, and yeah, even as I was making it, I was kind of just playing it by ear and figuring out like what kind of style I wanted to go with as I was doing the elastic. But I finally, once I did a couple rows on the top, I realized that I wanted to do kind of like the poofy bust kind of situation and cinch it at the top and then at the bottom. And I'm so stinking happy with how it turned out. I just think that it's so fun and flirty and playful, and I feel like I can dress it up for like a night out, or I can dress it down with like a skirt or like a pair of jeans or shorts or something to like make it a little bit more casual for the summer. I did cut the tassels a little bit. The length of them was just like a little bit more dramatic than is my personal preference. So I trimmed them just a bit just so they would kind of touch more like my belly button. I usually wear like high-waisted pants or skirts anyways. So the long tassels just, I don't know, it just felt like a little bit too much for me. So I'm really happy with the shorter tassels. I think it's just a little bit more me, and I think it'll go with the pants and bottoms that I have in my wardrobe anyways. The process of using shearing or shirring, I actually never know how to say it. Shearing elastic is not that difficult as long as you follow the process properly. Basically, as you saw, I just loaded up the bottom bobbin with the shearing elastic, and you have to hand wind your bobbin, and then you just sew like normal. The mistake that I made was, like normal sewing, I was sewing my garment inside out because that's normally how we sew. I made it 3 lines into sewing the elastic when I realized that since I was sewing the shirt inside out and the elastic is in the bottom part of the bobbin, so the front part of the shirt was at the bottom, if that makes sense, the elastic was showing through on the front of the shirt instead of on the inside like we would want it. So I basically had to undo and seam rip out all of the elastic that I had already painstakingly done. It probably took me, I mean, it didn't take me all that long to do the elastic, probably like maybe 20-25 minutes. And it took me probably just that amount of time to seam rip all of that out and then do it all again, sewing with the garment right side out. So that is my biggest lesson learned for the day is if you're doing any kind of shearing elastic, make sure that you are sewing the shearing with your garment right side out. I feel like there's probably a lot of sewists watching this right now like, duh, you idiot, but you know, we're just learning as we go, and mistakes are okay, and sometimes it just happens and we learn from them and then we don't make them again. So it's totally fine. It was a little bit frustrating, and I was kind of annoyed at myself for not fully doing my research before starting. These things happen and we move on, and now I have a beautiful, cute shirt. The next piece is going to be that green paisley dress. I've done a thrift flip in this style before and it's turned out really, really well. So I'm going to kind of replicate that with this dress and walk you through the process. I'm super excited. I think it's going to be a great new piece to add to my spring and summer wardrobe. So let's get started. I'm just starting out here by cutting out all of the pieces that I want to from the dress. So the first step is to cut off the length of the dress that I want to. I already measured exactly where I wanted this to lay. So I'm just going ahead with my rotary cutter and just cutting a straight line across the bottom of the dress. And then I'm going to use my curved ruler to make the cutout in the back of the dress. If you don't have a curved ruler, you can just do this by hand. But yeah, I'm just going to trace this out and then go in with my scissors and cut out exactly where I marked on the fabric. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing for the front of the dress as well. I did mess up and make mistake number like 600 today and cut this front scoop way deeper than I had intended. I don't really know how that happened. I like pinned it exactly where I wanted it to be and where I wanted it to lay, but I think I don't know, I must have just pinned it too low or something like that. So it's okay. We're going to pivot and make the most out of it. And then this dress had some facing around the collar. So I'm just going ahead and removing all of that from there. I cut most of it out when I was cutting out the back piece and the collar anyways. So just removing all the extra there, making sure this is all nice and clean. And then I'm going in with a zigzag stitch to finish the seam around the collar and the back, and then in the armpits as well. I'm just going to do a straight zigzag stitch around all of the raw edges, and then I'm going to fold it over and do just like one rolled hem. This material was so difficult to work with. I don't really know what it was. I need to go and check the tag and see what kind of material it was, but it just like would not roll for me for some reason. It was some kind of like stretchy kind of polyester situation. I tried doing like a rolled hem with my iron just to like flatten it down before going to the sewing machine, and it just like wouldn't crease when I ironed it. It just kept popping back open. So then I tried just going to the machine and rolling it while I was sewing, and it just like wouldn't work with me. It was so frustrating. I was honestly just getting so fed up with it. But I somehow persevered and got all of those hems done. Now it is time to make the straps to attach to the shoulders. I wanted to have kind of like a tied shoulder strap situation. I was kind of on the fence about this in the beginning when I was making the plan for this piece. But after messing up the collar, I think that I decided that a strapped shoulder kind of made sense, just so that I could make it more of like a pinafore dress kind of situation where I could adjust the length of it and make it like more of a pinafore dress, which is a little bit longer or less of one, just depending on like the outfit that I was going with for the day. So I'm just cutting out my fabric here. I wanted my final straps to be 1.5 inches thick. So I'm just cutting straps that are 3 inches to start out with. We're going to cut out 4 ties. So I'm just going to do that here. And then once I have all 4 ties cut out, I'm going to take it over to my sewing machine and just fold them over in half with the right sides touching each other and just do a straight stitch all the way along the fold of each strap. And then per usual, when we're making straps, I'm just cutting the excess fabric off of the seam and then doing that for all 4 straps. And then we're gonna use our little flippy tool to flip them all the right side out. We are getting so close to being finished here. Pardon the mess in this shot. I don't know why I didn't clean that up before doing this. I think I was just dying to be finished with this project. But we're gonna pin the straps to the front and back pieces of the dress. So just pinning those right sides facing each other and then taking it over to the sewing machine and just doing a quick little zigzag stitch to connect everything. Okay, Yay! I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. It ended up being more of like a pinafore style dress rather than like the tied back dress situation that I was planning on doing. But I think this is really pretty. I really love the tied shoulder straps. That means that I can make the dress more of like a pinafore look or less of a pinafore kind of situation, depending on the mood that I'm in. I can also like wear the straps crisscross in the front and the back, and or like do kind of like a halter top situation as well if I wanted to do that. So I think this dress is going to be very versatile and a great summer piece to add to my wardrobe. That is all that I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching and for going on this thrift flipping journey with me today. I had so much fun making these pieces with you today and adding some new pieces to my spring and summer wardrobe. Per usual, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next week for our next video. Have a gorgeous day.